Discover how a millionaire's life changed forever after saving twins in an incredible snowstorm. The snowstorm howled as if the world itself was crying out in desperation. Jacob West, a small-town mechanic turned millionaire, tightened his scarf and gripped the steering wheel of his truck, driving carefully down familiar streets now drenched in white. It was Christmas Eve. The world outside was a winter wonderland, but the biting cold seeped into his bones, reminding him of the struggles that shaped his roots. Ever since he'd hit it big, he'd never strayed from giving back. Tonight, like many nights, was the same. He was on his way to deliver supplies to the neighborhood families that needed it the most. As he turned down an empty street, the wind whipped fiercely around him, urging him to turn back. But he couldn't allow fear to dictate his actions, not on this night. It was when he spotted them that his heart sank deep. Two small figures huddled at a bus stop, bodies trembling in the rawness of the winter storm. Two young twins, arms wrapped around each other for warmth, shivering like leaves in the wind. Their big, frightened eyes looking up at him pierced through the storm's chaos. Without a second thought, Jacob jumped out of his truck, determination driving him. "Hey there! What are you doing out in this storm?" His voice was a soft anchor amidst the swirling snow. They were lost, alone, and their mother in a nearby shelter was frantically searching for them. His instinct tugged at him. A firefighter once had saved him from despair. Now it was his turn. With the twins securely bundled in his arms, he traversed the storm back to his truck, adrenaline pumping. He handed them hot chocolate as he drove, watching their little fingers close around the cups, their smiles slowly rekindling warmth in his heart. When they finally reached their mother, relief flooded the small room as tears filled her eyes, a grateful embrace exchanged between them. That night, Jacob became a hero not just in the town but in the hearts of those who saw the truth of his actions. But the very next day, as news spread of his good deed, criticism ignited among his affluent colleagues. "You put those kids in danger by going out like that," scoffed a well-dressed associate, sneering down at his humility. Jacob's heart sank. How could they not understand? Their luxury blinded them to the struggles swarming the streets he'd grown up on. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jacob faced a bewildering tension. Torn between two worlds, one of wealth that mocked his compassion and the other of deep-rooted loyalty struggling for survival, he could feel the weight of his million-dollar status pulling him away from both. As the storm outside raged on, the metaphorical divide between the elites and the working class widened, each word from his wealthy friends creating a greater rift. Tonight would change everything. As he stood before them, their laughter bouncing off the walls of the luxurious gathering, he realized something essential had shifted. Were they looking at him? Or was it the millionaire they thought he had become? What would it take for him to reconnect? The words caught in his throat, electric air filled with unspoken doubts, and just then, a furious gust knocked out all the lights, leaving the room cloaked in darkness. Jacob stood frozen, his heart racing. Was this a sign? The storm outside had acted as a harbinger. It raged on, mirroring the tempest in his soul. What would his next move be, and whom would he choose to save? The answers loomed behind. The veil of silence, waiting to be unveiled. The sudden darkness engulfed Jacob, a thick blanket of silence settling over the room. He blinked, trying to get his bearings as whispers began to ripple through the crowd. In the pitch black, some voices rose with uncertainty, others with nervous laughter. He could feel them looking at him, a blend of curiosity and judgment hanging in the air. "Jacob, are you okay?" A voice called out. It was Vanessa, a colleague who had always appreciated his down-to-earth nature. Her concern cut through the tension like a knife, reminding him of the very reason he felt out of place. They had all come here to celebrate wealth and status, yet here he was, spiraling into doubt, searching for meaning amid material excess. That he took a deep breath, closing his eyes for just a moment. The image of the twins flashed through his mind, their fear, their joy, the connection he felt when he handed them hot chocolate. Jacob had seen the reality beneath their innocent smiles. Suddenly, the whispers around him felt trivial, like snowflakes melting into the warmth of the earth. "Let us find some candles," someone suggested, breaking the spell of darkness. Jacob felt a surge of hope. Maybe this was a chance to reconnect with those around him, to remind them, maybe even himself, what truly mattered. As light flickered back to life, people resumed their chatter, but the atmosphere had shifted slightly. He grabbed a half-empty glass of champagne from a passing tray, taking a sip as he peered into the eyes of those around him. The laughter felt hollow, almost rehearsed. Could he breach the gap between them? "Guys," he started, his voice steady but loud enough to draw attention. The room quieted, all eyes darting his way. "We just experienced a moment of darkness, quite literally. It's a reminder of what's out there every day for so many. Just yesterday, I risked my life in a storm to save those kids. And I wonder, do we all remember what's important?" A few heads nodded, but many in the crowd shifted uneasily. A prominent businessman, clad in designer attire, raised an eyebrow. "And how does that help us tonight?" he quipped. The word stung, but Jacob pressed on. "Because giving back to our community matters. We have the means to change lives. Money can build mansions, but it can't buy joy, the kind that comes from making a difference." The hesitation in the air lay thick, his heart pounding as he looked around. What would he do next? Would he be that beacon of hope for them, or fade further into the shadows? After a long pause, Vanessa stepped forward. "He's right. We should make this a season of giving. Why not pool our resources together?" Her smile cut through the tension, and Jacob felt gratitude swell in his heart. The buzz started to grow, murmurs mingling with laughter as people began to discuss ways to contribute. The wall he'd felt around them had cracked, and light began to filter in, revealing the undeniable truth: meaning lies in connection and compassion. But just as momentum surged, his phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a message emerging from the storm, a desperate cry for help from that very neighborhood where he had found the twins. Jacob's heart raced again. Could he face this another time? Would this moment of clarity push him forward or cause him to falter? As he looked back at his friends, their faces lit with renewed purpose, he knew one thing: this was only the beginning. The real challenge was ahead. What lay ahead of him? Would he step back into that storm? The crowd's laughter faded into the background as Jacob's heart thumped loudly in his chest. The message glowed ominously on his screen, words that bore weight and urgency: "Help. We're trapped. Please." He felt the chill of the room dissipate as a sense of dread pooled in his stomach. The warmth of the gatherings didn't shield him from the reality that gripped his mind: the twins. They were so young, so fragile against nature's wrath. Memories of their bright eyes and grateful smiles propelled him to act, yet guilt gnawed at him. Had he just inspired them to give, only to abandon the cause that called him back into the storm? Jacob? Vanessa's voice pierced through his anxiety, her brow furrowed with concern. He snapped his attention back to her, taking a deep breath to steady himself. I just got a text. They need help. The twins, there's no time. I have to go," he said, his voice quivering slightly. The celebration around him dulled, faces shifting from enthusiasm to worry. "Wait," she said, stepping closer. "You can't just run off into the storm again. You need backup." Others in the crowd murmured in agreement, faces showing signs of concern that intensified Jacob's conflict. He looked at them, their wealth, their luxury, all so detached from the struggle he'd just witnessed. "I can't just stand here. I know what they're facing out there. They're my priority." His conviction rang out, but doubt crept in. What were his chances against the fury of nature? And how could he expect these people, who just moments ago clinked glasses over wealth, to rally for an urgent cause without first stirring a deeper commitment? "Let us go, then," someone shouted from the back. It was a younger man dressed in business casual, his eyes sparking with passion. "I'll drive. We'll get there and help, I swear." The atmosphere shifted once again, excitement igniting around Jacob like fireworks in the dark. He looked around and saw others nodding, their expressions shifting from discomfort to determination. "If we can make a difference," Jacob murmured under his breath, "why wouldn't we?" As people began gathering their coats and hustling toward the door, he felt a swell of hope. The linear horizon between groups faded, they were all in it together. Vanessa took his arm, her eyes shining with pride. It was a connection beyond mere wealth, an insight into the heart of their collective potential. "Trust me, Jacob," she said, radiating warmth. "We're stronger together." They stepped into the outside world, and the wind howled as if nature itself was warning them away. Snow whipped around them, and Jacob's resolve solidified. With each gust, he recalled the twins' faces, that flicker of joy and hope he had ignited. They could return that joy. As they piled into the car, a sense of direction settled in. He glanced down at his phone, the message still displaying. He took a deep breath, knowing this journey would be fraught with challenges, likely matching the storm itself. But was he prepared? What would they find when they reached that neighborhood again, or perhaps, what would find them? The road ahead filled with uncertainty, yet purpose hummed in his veins. All he could do was hope that this effort wouldn't just be a race against the storm, but also a fight against the darkness looming within their own hearts. As the car sped off into the swirling snowstorm, Jacob felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. But deep inside, a question lingered: was he truly ready to face the storm again, not just outside, but the one raging within? The wind howled as they sped down the streets, snowflakes darting like errant thoughts, blurring the world outside. Jacob's mind raced even faster. Thoughts of the twins filled every inch of his consciousness. What could possibly be going on? Were they scared? Were they okay? The questions whirled in his head, mixing with the worry that gripped his heart. "Just hold on, guys. We're coming," Jacob whispered into the void, hoping somehow his words would cross the distance and reach them. From the front seat, the driver, a young woman with bright, determined eyes, glanced back at him. "We'll get there. Just a few more blocks." Others shared stories and exchanged nervous laughter in the back seat, trying to maintain morale. Vanessa squeezed Jacob's hand, grounding him in the chaos. She met his gaze with a fierce determination, and in that moment, he felt another spark of hope. They were not just rushing into a storm, they were plunging into a fight for lives, for hope. Pulling up to the twin street, the landscape morphed drastically. Where laughter and life once flourished, a haunting stillness now hung in the air. Snow blanketed everything in sight, muffling sounds and dulling colors. Jacob's heart sank. "Please, God," he breathed, an internal plea that resonated deep within him. They rushed into action, scrambling from the warmth of the car into the biting cold. Driven by urgency, they moved toward the house, curtains fluttering like ghosts in the wind, as if the home itself held its breath in anticipation. Jacob felt his heart beat louder with each step. As they approached the door, he raised his fist to knock but stopped. "Are you ready?" Vanessa asked softly. Her fingers interlaced with his, her support a steadying force. He nodded, even as uncertainty gnawed at him. With a firm knock, the sound echoed ominously through the silence. They waited, anxiety crackling in the air. Minutes felt like hours until finally, the door opened a crack, revealing a frightened face: Mrs. Mason, the twins' mother. Her eyes were wide, shadows of panic and relief dancing in them. "Jacob?" she whispered incredulously, glancing at the group behind him. "You came? We're here to help," Jacob exclaimed, his voice stronger than he felt. "What happened?" Tears glistened in her eyes as she stepped aside, allowing them into the dimly lit living room. The stubborn glow of a few candles illuminated the scene. The storm hit hard. They're stuck in the basement, it's flooding. I tried to get down, but... Jacob's heart dropped. Flooding? Instincts kicked in, and he turned to the team behind him, a fierce determination surging through him. Keep the lights on. Grab whatever you can to help with the flooding. The group sprang to action, searching the room for buckets and towels, anything to contain the damage. Vanessa kept her hand on Jacob's arm for a moment longer, a silent conveyance of her strength, then joined the fight. Jacob raced down the basement stairs, each step heavy with foreboding. The air grew damper, and distant voices broke through the darkness. "We're here!" he shouted, urgency lacing his tone, but fear threaded through his heart. The twins' voices echoed back, strained and frightened. "We're scared, Jacob. Hold on. We're coming!" he yelled as he reached the bottom, the sight before him chilling him to the bone. Water pooled thickly on the floor, creeping ever closer to where the twins huddled, soaked and shivering. Before he could fully process the scene, he was swept up in a whirlwind of urgency. "Get blankets!" he called out, lunging toward the twins. Their scared eyes met his, and in that moment, he saw not just fear, but a flicker of hope. "Don't worry. You'll be okay," he assured, as he wrapped his arms around them. Yet as he held them tightly, a louder question resounded in his mind: could hope be enough to combat not only nature's chaos but the uncertainty lingering in their hearts? As the water rose around them, the battle for safety was just beginning, and Jacob knew there was no margin for error. Would courage be enough to save not just the twins, but the very essence of his own spirit? Jacob felt the weight of the twins pressing against him, their bodies cold and trembling, yet somehow, they clung to him like he was their lifeline. Beside him, the water continued to creep ominously, taking with it the safety of this once comforting space. Panic threatened to seep into his thoughts, but he couldn't afford to give in. The twins needed him now more than ever. "Okay, listen to me," he urged, meeting their frightened gazes again. "We're going to get you out of here. I need you to stay close to me, all right?" Their nodding heads bolstered his confidence, but he knew time was slipping away. The basement was a dimly lit cave of uncertainty. With the flickering glow of the candles above, he could make out the rough outlines of shelves, toys scattered about, and the creeping shadows of despair surrounding them. As the water splashed against his ankles, he caught a glimpse of the stairs a world above that felt impossibly distant. "Here!" Vanessa rushed down, nearly slipping in the icy water as she handed Jacob a blanket. "I brought this. It'll help keep them warm." "Perfect, thanks." He wrapped the twins tighter, casting a glance toward the flood. "We need to create a barrier. This water can't rise any higher." He gestured toward the shelves, which loomed precariously filled with playthings and decor. "If we move those over here, we can block some of it." Vanessa nodded and sprang into action, moving the furniture and anything else she could find, while Jacob's heart raced in rhythm to the rising water. A collective effort soon ensued, as everyone worked together with purpose. They shoved crates and light furniture toward the growing pool, their sweat mixing with the icy spray as they fought against the storm's wrath. With every movement, the anxiety in Jacob's chest intertwined with determination. Twice he looked back at the twins. "You guys hold on tight, all right?" They clutched each other, teeth chattering but resilience flickering in their eyes. Just as they finished, a loud crack resonated overhead. Jacob's heart dropped. The storm raged outside, powerful and unforgiving. The basement door. If it broke loose, the water would rush in like an unstoppable torrent. "We have to block the door too. Quick!" Jacob rushed towards the stairway, gritting his teeth against panic. He yanked at the door, but it held firm against the swell of icy air from outside. Quickly, he and Vanessa took turns pushing anything they could find against it: a chair, a large storage bin, anything to reinforce their makeshift barrier. The twins' frightened whispers floated through the tumult. "Jacob, what if it doesn't hold? Then we'll fight harder," he vowed, gripping the banister tighter, his resolve hardening. "No storm is stronger than us." They turned to each other for strength, hope glinting frantically in their eyes. Jacob's breath quickened, the fear momentarily overshadowed by the deep connection they shared in that moment, but just as he felt the surge of hope, the sound of rushing water slushed behind him. He turned instinctively, and his stomach dropped. The water had reached their knees now, the cold creeping up urgently. He hardly had time to react when he spotted a glimmering object amidst the waves, a submerged toy, lost to chaos. "No!" The scream escaped him, a visceral reaction to the loss, the fate of optimism sealed within a child's plaything now listed in the depths of despair. He dove underwater, kicking through the chilly, murky water, pushing against the currents to reach the toy. Once he had it, he surged back up, gasping for breath. The twins' wide eyes met his, and he raised the toy triumphantly as if it were a trophy from battle. "See? No matter how hard it gets, there's always something to fight for. We'll find a way." He raised the toy like a talisman, igniting their vigor with one single ACTE.AS. They all took a breath, a heavy thud echoed from above, sending another ripple of despair through the group. Jacob's mind raced again, a question hanging in the air: what if the storm was not just a test of strength, but a definitive turning point in their lives? What awaited them beyond the door? Would they be able to face whatever was coming next? With hearts pounding, they all shared a glance, trepidation hanging tightly at the edges of their resolve. But together, could they face the uncertainty and emerge stronger, or would this storm become the very thing that shattered them? The flickering candlelight wavered as another thud struck the basement above. Jacob's heart thumped wildly in his chest, each beat amplifying the suffocating air around them. He looked at the twins, their big eyes wide with uncertainty, and felt the pressure to protect them intensify. "Stay close," he called, tightening his grip on the toy he had just rescued. From somewhere in the chaos above, he heard a creak that made his skin crawl. The door was buckling under the relentless forces of nature, the sound echoing like thunder to their trapped ears. "We have to do something fast. The barrier may not hold," he warned Vanessa, who was trying to shove a bookcase against the door. "We need more weight." Nods of understanding sprang from their desperate unease. Jacob glanced back at the twins, who had instinctively huddled closer, gripping each other's hands. They were scared, but that fear mingled with resolve. He fought to remember that strength, to keep it alive in the chaos surrounding them. Vanessa's eyes lit up with an idea. "The boxes in the corner. They're full of old clothes. We can stack them by the door." Jacob wasted no time. "Let us go." They dashed toward the corner, the freezing water splashing against their legs in pursuit, sending tiny waves crashing at their knees. As they heaved box after box of old clothes toward the door, Jacob felt sweat trickle down his back, mingling with the cold splashes of water that hit him. The twins joined the effort, their small arms pushing the boxes against the door. Despite their frail size, they threw their weight into each piece, determination radiating from their little forms. It was inspiring to watch. A flicker of warmth burst through the shared desperation, a resilience he didn't know they possessed. "This is it," Jacob shouted, rallying the group. "We're going to hold this together." He worked alongside them, the water pooling around their hips, the blankets getting soaked. Yet as they reached for another box, the creaking intensified. Jacob's heart plummeted. The pressure was building explosively above them, and they knew it wouldn't hold much longer. "Jacob!" One of the twins, Olivia, whimpered, her voice small and raw. "What happens if we can't keep it out?" He hesitated, a lump forming in his throat. How do you reassure a child in a moment like this? "If we keep fighting, we'll find a way," he said, forcing a smile. "Don't forget what we just did, what we're capable of." Suddenly, the ground shook, and a loud crash above made Jacob flinch. The door thudded against their barricade, and he felt the box behind him buckle, making him lose his balance. No, no, no. The water surged higher, invading their makeshift fortress. Jacob yelled to the twins, "Grab hold. We can't let it pull us under." As he hurled his body against the boxes, he felt every ounce of cold gripping him. The twins latched onto each other and him with fierce determination carved from fear. They were teetering on the edge of something crucial, an emotional precipice he'd felt before, but not quite like this. A chilling realization struck him. What if their fight wasn't just against the storm? What if it was against their own fears and the very idea of helplessness? There was power in standing together, but the storm was surging, furious, pushing against them relentlessly. "Jacob!" Vanessa's voice broke through the tumult, grounding him. She pointed with wide eyes. The water was reaching their waist now, threatening to pull them down. "We have to go. Now." He looked at the twins, and a fierce wave of protectiveness washed over him. The door wasn't just a barrier anymore, it was a threshold to their future. "Get ready!" Jacob bellowed, feeling fear morph into a desperate energy. "We're breaking through." But just as they braced against the door, everything fell silent. The world paused, trembling in that frozen moment of dread. The storm outside raged, the potential for disaster looming like a dark shadow over them. Everything hung in the balance, and Jacob grappled with the path ahead. Would this storm reveal the strength they didn't know they had? The door buckled again, and just like that, it burst open, forcing them into an unknown destiny. Was this the break they had fought so hard for, or the beginning of something far worse? The force of the door swung wide, sending a gust of frigid air into the basement. Jacob stumbled forward, instinctively shielding the twins as the icy wind whipped around them. He strained to see through the shadowy haze that engulfed the doorway, worry stabbing at his chest. Was this the storm's fury unleashed? "Stay close!" He shouted again, pressing his back against the wall to brace himself and the twins. The blizzard roared through the opening like a wild beast, causing the water to slosh violently around their legs, threatening to drag them down into the depths of despair. Vanessa, her face pale yet resolute, leaned into the wind. "What do we do now?" she yelled over the gale. Jacob's mind raced. "We need to get out of here. Follow my lead." With the twins clutching his sides, he stepped towards the swirling chaos outside. Each step felt like wading through thick mud, heavy and nearly impossible. The once familiar world had transformed into a white wasteland. Snow swirled in tight spirals, obscuring his view, but still, he pressed on, instinctively nudging the twins forward. "Keep moving," he urged, glancing back to ensure they were right behind him. Despite their fear, determination flickered in their eyes like candles in the dark. Tiny, but fierce, the frigid air bit into them, and for a moment, Jacob felt the full weight of their vulnerability. Would they truly survive this? A pang of doubt slid in, but he pushed it away. Fear was just another obstacle to overcome, and they were in it together. All at once, the wind seemed to shift, tossing snowflakes like projectiles. "Head for that cabin." Jacob pointed to a dim outline in the distance. If there was any hope, it lay there. With renewed urgency, they trudged through the snow, breath puffing in white clouds. The fortitude in his bones surged as he heard the twins mutter encouragements to each other, their small voices fighting against the storm's wrath. "We can do this. We can make it." They reached the cabin, a worn and weary structure that creaked and groaned beneath the weight of the storm. Jacob yanked the door open against the howling wind, and they tumbled inside, shaken and breathless. "Is everyone all right?" he asked, the tension releasing as he clutched the twins close. They nodded, chattering teeth the only sign of their fright. Vanessa was already at the window, peering out at the slashing snow. "It's bad out there," she said, worry etched on her face. "What if it doesn't stop?" Jacob leaned against the wooden wall, the heartbeat of the cabin echoed the thunder of his own. Outside, the storm was relentless, a violence that spoke of nature's fury. He glanced at the twins, and in that moment, a vision of hope flickered urgently in his mind. "We'll wait it out," he said, firming his voice despite the anxiety churning within. "We're together in this." As they settled against the cabin walls, the reality of their situation weighed heavily. They had survived the basement. Their small triumph was monumental. But what awaited them outside was unknown. Would the world they'd face once the storm passed still be the same? Suddenly, the door rattled, drawing their attention. Jacob's heart skipped. Was it more than just the wind? Jacob Olivia's voice was barely a whisper. "Stay here," he commanded, rising slowly. Every instinct shouted to protect them, but curiosity gnawed at him. Something was out there. He crept to the door and paused, hand hovering over the handle. Was this what he really wanted? To face whatever was waiting outside? His pulse raced again, this time with anticipation. What if the storm had brought more than just chaos? The door shook harder. With a deep breath, he made his decision. He turned the knob, ready to confront whatever lay beyond. The moment of truth lingering, heavy in the air. Jacob swung the door open, bracing himself for whatever chaos lay beyond. Snow blasted against his face as he stepped outside, the cold biting into his skin like 1,000 tiny knives. The storm was alive, swirling in frenzied patterns that seemed to mock him, each gust a reminder of the peril they were in. "Jacob!" The twins' voices echoed in his ears, but he was already focused on the thick wall of snow obscuring everything beyond a few feet. He squinted, searching for the source of the rattling, the sound that urged him to open the door in the first place. "Hello? Is anyone there?" he called, his voice swallowed by the storm. Silence enveloped him, but moments later, a faint shout emerged from the depths of the storm. It was a human voice, desperate and strained, cutting through the storm's fury. Jacob's heart raced. Whoever was out there needed help. "Wait here," he shouted back to the cabin, not waiting for a reply. The twins couldn't fathom his growing urgency, but he couldn't bear the thought of ignoring someone in need. He took a step forward, each movement a battle against the raging snow. "Who's there?" he called again, advancing slowly, every inch feeling like a marathon against the tempest. Then, through the haze, he saw a dark figure stumbling, barely visible. "Help! Please!" The voice broke through the howling wind. Jacob's blood surged with a mix of adrenaline and fear. "Hold on!" he yelled, pushing through the dense wall of white. Deeper and deeper he went, feeling the weight of his decision. If he turned back now, if he abandoned this stranger, they would never forgive him. 15 paces forward. Then 20. He could barely keep his footing, but he fought against the snow. "I'm coming." The voice was closer now, wavering, but it sparked a flicker of hope within him. Suddenly, Jacob stumbled, his feet slipping beneath him, and he fell hard into a mound of snow, sprawling out into the icy depths. Panic gripped him. Was this how it would end? A desperate, futile act swallowed by the storm? With a roaring determination, he pushed himself up, shaking off the cold. "Where are you?" he shouted, desperate now, each breath coming out like fog. He felt the cold threatening to seep into his bones. "Here." The voice was closer still. He could feel the energy of someone fighting against the storm, just as he was. He took one more step and then another, pushing aside the encroaching snow with his bare hands, and then he saw them. A woman, tired and a bit disoriented, clutching a small child against her chest. Jacob's heart stopped for a moment. The weight of their escape hung heavy as he rushed towards them. "I've got you," he said, urgency filling his voice. "This way. Follow me back." He reached for her and the child, pulling them closer, steadying them against the storm. The woman looked at him, gratitude dancing in her eyes, but her strength was fading. "We were caught in the storm. I thought I lost them." Her voice cracked, the fear gripping her. "Don't worry, you're safe now," Jacob assured her. He turned back to the cabin, ready to lead them to shelter and warmth, but then a sharp crunch sounded beneath his feet, a low rumble echoing from the distance. What was that? Olivia's frightened voice echoed in his mind. We need to hurry, Jacob urged, feeling the weight of urgency return to every muscle in his body. They turned around, barely visible behind a veil of white, but the ground beneath them trembled again. The sense of danger shifted like the storm itself, threatening to unravel every ounce of safety they had fought for. As they rushed back to the cabin, Jacob glanced at the woman, her face pale, but her grip on her child strong. Are we going to be okay? She asked, voice trembling like the snowflakes falling around them. It's going to be all right, he said, even as doubt gnawed at the edges of his mind. Yet lurking in the shadows of the storm was an unknown fate awaiting them. What lay ahead might change everything once again. The wind howled around them, fierce and relentless, as Jacob led the woman and her child back toward the cabin. His heart raced, both from fear and an overwhelming drive to protect them. With each step, he felt the snow give way beneath his boots, but he couldn't falter. Not now. Just a little further, he encouraged, pushing through the freezing air. The weight of the child in the woman's arms must have felt like a mountain, and he could see the fatigue etched on her face, the worry deep in her eyes. Can you tell me your name? He asked as they moved. Sarah, she replied, the strain in her voice threading through the storm like a lifeline. And this is my son, Evan. She tightened her grip on the boy, drawing him closer. Hang on tight, Evan. We're almost home, Jacob assured with a softer tone, trying to muster a smile despite the chaos around them. He could barely see the edges of the cabin through the blinding snow, but he remembered their path. Just then, another rumble shook the ground beneath them, louder this time, a distinct tremor that sent fear racing through his veins. Jacob's mind raced. With the storm growing fiercer, was it possible that something else was at play? Keep moving, he shouted over the wind, feeling the urgency clawing at him again. He could hardly believe they had made it this far. They had to keep going. Suddenly, the wind shifted like the storm itself had decided to retreat just for a moment. There it was, the warm glow from the cabin's windows, a beacon of hope in the raging blizzard. Jacob stumbled forward, his determination stronger than the cold wrapping around him. He reached the door and yanked it open with a grunt, barriers breaking as he entered. Get inside, he urged, ushering Sarah and Evan inside. The warmth hit him like a wave, washing away the bitter cold, but there was no time for relief. He turned back to the storm, scanning the white landscape for any other lost souls that might be out there. As soon as they were in, Olivia rushed forward, her eyes wide. Jacob! You did it! You brought them back! Not all of them, he murmured, his brow furrowed, feeling a growing sense of dread over the continuing storm. But they're safe, she said, glancing at Sarah and Evan, relief sweeping over her features. How long will the storm last? Sarah asked, her voice shaky. No idea, Jacob admitted, the weight of their shared anxiety settling in the room. But we're safe inside for now. Then he heard it again, a low rumble, just outside the walls of the cabin. It was closer, more pronounced, and something about it made his pulse quicken. The earth trembled beneath him in a way that felt wrong. What was that? Olivia whispered, her eyes darting to the door. I don't know, Jacob said, trying to mask his own unease. But we should stay together. We're stronger when we. The door banged against its frame, rattling as another gust of wind howled. Jacob rushed to secure it, his heart thudding against his ribcage. Outside, the storm was furious, yet there was an unsettling stillness beneath that fury, a quiet anticipation that gnawed at his instincts. As he turned back to Sarah and her child, he felt a new determination arise. They weren't just fighting the storm now, they were facing something deeper, something unknown. We'll figure this out, he promised, although a nagging doubt crept into his mind. What if the storm brought more than just snow? The room fell silent, a heavy tension wrapping around them. Jacob could feel their collective breaths freeze in time, heavy with unspoken fears. Outside, the world was a swirling chaos, and within those walls, they were just beginning to understand the true nature of their struggle, but somewhere in the distance, he thought he could hear something else, something calling to him through the storm's fury. What awaited them beyond the door? The storm raged outside, but within the rickety walls of the cabin, Jacob felt a strange serenity settle over them. The flickering candlelight painted soft shadows on the walls, illuminating the faces around him: children, parents, allies. Hope lingered in the air like warmth on a chilly day, but the tension remained thick as everyone awaited the next tremor. Jacob locked eyes with Vanessa. She stood beside him, her presence was unwavering, a reminder of their shared purpose. "We'll get through this," he whispered, though doubts clawed at him. "Together." In that moment, the door rattled once more, a harsh, chaotic sound that jolted them back to the reality outside. The storm, relentless and powerful, felt like a living creature, a force that challenged their resilience. But it had already revealed so much. This storm, with its violent winds and bitter cold, had forged bonds that wealth could never buy. "Listen." Olivia's voice rang out, a tremor of hope in her tone. "Do you hear that?" Everyone turned ears toward the door, which vibrated ominously. Beneath the howl of the wind, faint knocking echoed. Jacob's heart quickened. Were they truly done? Were there more souls out there to fight for? Without a word, he dashed to the door, adrenaline surging through him. "Stay back," he warned, as he swung the door open against the wind's onslaught. Outside, snow swirled in a frantic dance, but there, silhouetted against the white, were more figures like shadows amidst the storm. They approached cautiously, struggling against the furious elements. "Help us!" One voice cried out, recognizable and filled with desperation. Jacob's breath caught as he recognized the voice. It was Mrs. Mason, the twins' mother. His heart surged. "Grab hold!" Jacob shouted as he reached out for her hand, pulling her and the frightened twins ahead of the freezing gale. The other families folded in behind, finding warmth in the shelter of the cabin. Jacob felt the space around him swell with urgency, so many relying on them. The cabin's atmosphere thickened with determination as everyone piled into the safety of the small room. Frozen faces began to melt with warmth as they gathered against the feeble flames of the candles. With the last of the newcomers in, Jacob shut and braced the door once more, panting heavily. That's when he felt it, the shifting of energy in the cabin. A conversation began, hesitant at first, then gaining momentum, a collective heartbeat thrumming against the stillness that enveloped them. Families shared their stories, their fears, and Jacob listened, his heart swelling with each word. "Tonight is not just about survival," he began, standing tall among them. "It's about the future we want to build together, the community we can create when we unite. We've felt fear, but now we can feel strength." A murmur of agreement spread, and Vanessa chimed in, her voice bright like a beacon. "We've experienced darkness, but in here, we have the chance to build light for others. This storm may be tough, but we are tougher together." Encouraged, Jacob picked up another candle, holding it high. "Every one of you has faced this storm, both outside and within. Let us fight to change those struggles into strength, to find the joy that comes from lifting each other up." Inspired nods radiated through the room. Right there, in that moment, the storm became more than just a physical threat. It forged a connection that stirred them to reevaluate what truly mattered. Fear and uncertainty transformed into courage and commitment. As the night wore on, they began to brainstorm ideas, rallying together a plan that would carry them through the storm and into their lives. They talked about organizing a community fund, a way to support families, a way for them to contribute their resources and skills collectively. Joseph, the man who had volunteered to help Jacob earlier, offered his tech skills to kick-start it online. Laughter and energy surged as they mapped out an action plan, resolving that this storm would not be in vain. Outside, blinding snow swirled furiously, but inside, there was warmth. Jacob glanced at the twins, their cheeks pink from the heat of the space, eyes wide with hope. In their expressions, he found a new kind of love, the grand realization that true wealth lies not in money, but in the spirit of community, compassion, and connection. As they forged plans, Jacob felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He hadn't just saved the twins anymore, he had embraced the larger calling that echoed through him. This storm had changed him and had given him a purpose beyond himself, a calling to serve others. "Let us declare this a day of renewal and giving," Jacob said, linking arms with his new friends, looking each squarely in the eye. "One act of kindness at a time, let's turn this winter's wrath into a blossoming spring of hope." With voices rising and hearts filled with determination, the room erupted in agreement. They were no longer just scared individuals facing a storm, they were a united family, a community ready to emerge stronger together. Outside, as the wind howled on, Jacob felt prepared to face whatever lay ahead. This day would be remembered. It wasn't just about weathering the storm, but about sharing light and compassion to battle against the darkest of winters. And as the storm raged on, they lit candles in their hearts, burning brightly against the ferocity of nature outside. They were ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. Now, this is the moment you need to subscribe immediately to the channel. Don't miss the next exclusive stories that will inspire your heart. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help spread our message. Comment your thoughts and feelings about this transformation and share instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this. Your support means everything. This is the chance to stand together. Don't wait not even one more second.